Welcome everybody to this RadPod breaker. My name is Heidi Cuda. I am here with High Fidelity. We are an investigative show about disinformation, but we always break for breaking news. And there's breaking news out of England that we thought was very important for our viewership. It relates to a Church of England decision, which is not particularly surprising, but very disappointing. We're going to bring in Peter Tatchell. Many of our friends will recognize him from episode 51. He's one of the bravest people we know. He's been battling on behalf of gay rights and human rights for 55 years. If you have not seen the film about his life, Hating Peter Tatchell, which was produced by Sir Elton John and his partner David Furnish, we do recommend that you do that. And also, please watch episode 51. Let's bring in Peter to tell us what's happening and what we need to know.
Well, thank you. Earlier this week, the bishops of the Church of England announced that there would be no change in church policy, that they would continue to ban same-sex couples from being married in church. They reiterated ostensibly their love and care for LGBT plus people, but said that marriage equality was a step too far. So basically, what the church has done is enforce discrimination. And in my view, from my limited reading of the scriptures, discrimination is not a Christian value. Moreover, today, the church has gone one step further. It has issued a pastoral letter which apologizes to the LGBT plus community for its persecution and oppression and offers its repentance. However, of course, that apology and repentance is worthless given that it's continuing to discriminate by denying same-sex couples the right to marry the person they love. Now, the church is saying it will bless same-sex couples in a format that's still yet to be decided. But, you know, the church has been refusing to bless same-sex couples for decades, even though they bless pets and warships. And now, of course, even if they do go ahead with blessings, they still will not allow the right of same-sex couples to marry. It is just unconscionable discrimination. It reminds me of the policies of some churches in the southern United States during the era of segregation, when they refused to marry interracial couples. And I think when history is written, people will view the church's attitude on same-sex couples with the same disdain, horror, and disgust.
So there's nobody, I think, better who has more of a profound history in dealing with this and grappling with this and trying to push many of the churches out of the dark ages. But for me, this smacks of politics, of just being cagey. Like, what is behind? We had something here colloquially known as "Don't Ask, Don't Tell," which is kind of like that same sort of, just like disrespectful, sort of hedgy, way of dealing with this. But this smells very political.
Oh, absolutely. And what is extraordinary is that the Church of England is the established state church. It is the church of the state of the United Kingdom.
Okay.
And yet, even though in UK law, same-sex couples can marry in civil ceremonies, the church is being allowed to get away with not marrying them in church ceremonies. Now, that means there's a clear contradiction between church policy and state policy, which would not matter so much if it were not for the fact that the church is the state in this country, and King Charles is head of that church. And he is going along with this policy. As head of the church, he supports the church's stance, and he is complicit with homophobia.
Well, so I think it's important. I know that your view of outing is nuanced, and you do not think it's something that should be done without great purpose. But it should be noted that your activism resulted in the outing of bishops, I believe. And so for me, there seems to be a lot of just, I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems like
Massive hypocrisy.
yes, I was trying to find a good synonym for hypocrisy. But yes, can you tell our viewers a bit about that period of time and why this is really just so cowardly?
Well, you're right. The church has a long history of cowardice and hypocrisy with regard to LGBT plus people. Back in the early 1990s, when Dr. George Carey became the Archbishop of Canterbury, the global leader of the worldwide Anglican Communion, which of course includes the Episcopal Church in the United States and Canada, he issued a declaration saying that homosexuality was inferior to heterosexuality and that this justified discrimination in law against LGBT plus people, including discrimination in certain circumstances in employment, particularly with regard to teachers and members of the military, but also that same-sex couples were not fit and proper to foster or adopt children, that the age of consent should not be equalized at 16 for everyone, at a time when the age of consent for gay and bisexual men was 21 in England and Wales, compared to 16 for heterosexuals. And moreover, of course, he took a very strong stand against any form of recognition in law of same-sex love and commitment. The upshot of that was that many of the bishops were going along with this policy, quite a number of whom were themselves gay. So it was their contradiction between their public pronouncements and collusion with the homophobic church and their private secret homosexuality that led myself and other members of the LGBT plus direct action group Outrage to out 10 Anglican bishops in 1994. We simply called on them to tell the truth. They always preach that we should be honest and truthful, but they weren't being honest and truthful about their sexuality and relationships. The consequence of that outing was that, as far as I know, none of those bishops ever again aligned themselves with the homophobic policies of the church. Two of them eventually became great allies of the LGBT plus community.
Wow, it's huge.
And on top of that, because of the huge shock and controversy, the Archbishop of Canterbury was motivated to set up the first ever liaison between the Church of England and the lesbian and gay community, most notably the lesbian and gay Christian movement. So that began a dialogue. It certainly did not resolve things, but it did begin a dialogue. So I think in all senses, that naming of those bishops was effective and successful.
Wow, that is activism right there. Yes, high five.
So I have two questions. The first one is the reason the Anglican Church has denied marriage to LGBTQ people is that they state that the sanctity of marriage must remain between a man and a woman. And I would remind our audience that the Anglican Church came around because Henry VIII wanted a divorce. The Roman Catholic Church wouldn't divorce him. Henry VIII started his own church, made himself the head of it, and had 6 wives. So the whole sanctity of marriage thing rings hollow to me.
Absolutely.
But, go ahead.
I'm going to say that the church has changed its policies on lots of issues over the years. So for many, many years, centuries ago, the church endorsed and blessed slavery and colonialism. It sanctioned Britain's imperial military might that led to the conquest of nearly a quarter of the world's people. It also adamantly fought against votes for women, saying that women were meant to be their husbands, under their husband's tutelage, and that they should not have the right to vote. So there's just two examples of where the church maintained a very reactionary position, but eventually changed over time. And I'm sure that the current reactionary position opposing same-sex marriage will eventually change as well.
Go ahead and ask your second question, Hi-Fi, then I want to jump in.
So my second question is, the apology that the Church of England issued today reminds me a lot of an abusive partner. I'm sorry I had to beat you. I still love you. Does that sound familiar at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is like warm words which in no way are adequate for the scale of oppression and victimization that the church has visited upon the LGBT plus community for decades, for centuries, for millennia. So, you know, those words mean nothing when the actions of the church still oppose same-sex marriage. That's discrimination, and it's not, in my book, a Christian value.
Peter, you've been doing this for a very long time. This is very disappointing, but it's not surprising, is it?
No. You know, the church's pace of change is glacial, slow, foot dragging. It's just unconscionable that they cannot see the way in which they are aligning with an anti-human rights position.
Right.
You know, the only other people who hold a similar view to the church opposing same-sex marriage are far right and Islamist extremists. Nobody else supports that view.
Yeah.
And they're the kind of people that the church is lining up alongside. And you would have thought that would be a cause for pause and reflection, but apparently not. You know, they're putting ancient dogma before the emotional and, dare I say it, spiritual welfare of LGBT plus Christians. And that's a pretty shocking, damning thing to do.
Absolutely. And I think that we have an illusion in democratic countries that change is always progressive, when in fact, you know, I was working on an investigation a couple of years ago, and I had to call my daughter and let her know that there were going to be a lot of actions taken to try to suppress gay rights, and that her mom was going to fight him, because I could see it. I could see all the alignments between American far right extremists, Kremlin, operatives. I could see where it was all going. And I think it's important that it's always people coming together that actually pushes change, as you were describing with your story from the 1990s. So how can our viewers best support your efforts and the efforts globally to ensure that we do not regress when it comes to gay rights and human rights, that we continue to progress? Because that is not something we can take for granted, and it requires action, clearly.
And certainly in the United States, there is a huge backlash. I think already this year, and we're only at the, you know, we're only but just over halfway through January. There have been 100 new anti-LGBT plus bills introduced in the United States in various legislatures. Nearly over 100 in less than 3 weeks. That is very, very scary. But of course, LGBT plus people are fighting back, and we have the support of our friends and allies. And you're absolutely right. It is our collective action that brings about progressive change. It's our collective action that can halt the far right, or in this case, you know, religious extremists. If we work together, build alliances and coalitions, that way we are stronger, and we do have the capacity to win in the end.
That's beautiful. What is your message today to the Church of England? What do you want them to know from you, from your heart?
I think it's really important that members of the church reflect. We know that among grassroots Church of England members, 55% support same-sex marriage. So the bishops are clearly out of touch. So I would urge the church leaders to reflect on the fact that they are not giving voice to the views of the majority of Anglicans in England and Wales. I would ask ordinary Anglicans in England and Wales to write to your bishop, to tell them that you stand with the LGBT plus community and you want equality within the church. The church cannot speak of care, love, and compassion if it excludes LGBT plus people from the right to marry. And I'm saying that as someone who is not a church supporter. You know, I'm not religious, but I do stand against religious homophobia. And I think all of us who are not part of the church, we need to support those within the church who are battling to secure a fair deal, an equal deal for LGBT plus Anglicans and Episcopalians.
Thank you. Hi-Fi. Anything else before we?
I just have one final thing to say. I was raised Irish Catholic. I am lapsed. I don't go to church anymore. I don't remember hate being a value that was discussed in church, so I'm a little surprised by this. But my question for you is, the Church of England is allowing this hate to continue. And one of the things I've been looking at is church attendance. And as you can see, obviously in 2020, we had the pandemic. We still have a pandemic. There's been a precipitous decline. I feel that with what the Church of England has done here, they are only working to alienate more of the people who are in that church who do support gay marriage. And as far as I can tell, what they've just done will be but one more line in the obituary that will eventually be written for their church. Agree? Disagree?
You're totally correct. The trend within Anglican communions is that it's older Anglicans who still support a ban on same-sex marriage. Younger Anglicans in particular very much support marriage equality within the church. But many of them are having second thoughts and doubts about whether they should stay within a church that actively preaches against human rights. And I think that, you know, in many respects, you know, the church attendances are already falling. They're going to fall even faster when more and more young people take a look at their policies on LGBT plus people. They're going to see a bigoted church that defends discrimination. They're going to see a church which is prepared to, like the churches in South Africa under apartheid, refuse to marry people because of who they're in a relationship with. And that is pretty disgusting, pretty appalling. And I think it's going to be something that will eventually force a rethink, but a rethink based upon opportunism, upon selfish attempts to save the church rather than to stand for human rights of LGBT plus people.
I love what you said about asking members of the Church of England to do some soul searching. Peter Tatchell, you are a one-man wrecking ball against discrimination. We love you so much. We're so appreciative of the work that you do. You do so much to pull us out of the dark ages and to prevent us from going back. So it is my hope that this message that you put out today will go out into the, you know, beautiful universe that we're a part of and inspire some people to action. And please consider supporting PeterTatchellFoundation.org. So much good work is done there. And is there any final message you'd like to send out to our global viewership?
Well, first of all, just thank you so much for having me on the program and the interview today. But to your viewers and listeners, yeah, please do go to my foundation's website, petertatchellfoundation.org. In the top right-hand corner, there's a little button which says Join Us. If you click on that and give us your email address, we will send you a weekly bulletin of a range of LGBT plus and other human rights issues. Most of them very serious, but we occasionally try and put in a funny, quirky one to give you a laugh as well. It's totally free. There's no charge. We'd love to have you as part of our human rights community. So please do that if you wish. And I'll just finish with my motto, which is very simple. Don't accept the world as it is. Dream of what the world could be, and then help make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter Tatchell, for coming on our show and enlightening our viewers. Thank you so much.